Hello everyone and welcome to today's show. We're joined today by Emily Carver, Conservative commentator. I finally found someone who's more radical than me.
Oh, thank you, Maya.
Welcome to my show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Thanks, not bad. So obviously you're an expert in a lot of areas when it comes to the conservatism, libertarianism, basically freedom.
Indeed.
So let's talk about a few things, including obviously free speech, the media, and other issues that affects us. Let's start with the BBC. What's your opinion on the BBC?
Well, at least they have a studio, Maya.
Okay, the first burn of the I mean, we are today out here because it's safer.
It's rather nice. It's rather nice to be
no
outside.
excuse. Yeah,
We're outside in the fresh air, in
it's
a lovely bar here.
Change
It's
of
lovely.
scenery, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, we are going through a phase where there's a lot of talks right now about the BBC TV license or TV tax potentially being either reformed or abolished. And yesterday we had just had the news that the BBC have asked a pressure group, campaigners, to actually come out to protest, to defend the establishment and the TV tax. So what's your opinion on the whole situation?
You have almost 10% of magistrate court cases now about the TV licence. It hits single mothers the most, it hits the poorest hardest. And the thing is that the BBC need to make a positive message for why they are so important and why they serve a purpose. And I think that the conversation around the TV licence should be about how the BBC can be more sustainable into the future. And, you know, there are constant accusations of bias. And they really need to tackle this head on and have more diversity of opinion. I, for one, find it very depressing that every time there seems to be a sort of news panel, or particularly over the Brexit coverage, you always saw panels where the majority of the views were Remain, and the majority of views tended to be sort of lefty liberal, sort of along the sort of New Labour lines, rather than sort of Corbynista or Conservative. And it's sort of that. The way the BBC chooses to editorialise its news coverage and its politics coverage, it irks a lot of people, and that's why so many people are moving to YouTube or to new outlets like Talk Radio, LBC. People are moving very quickly, and I think the BBC needs to acknowledge that change is taking place and needs to look for a more sustainable model. I think that if the BBC has the freedom to create programs without having the strain of having to always be entirely objective, which they can never fulfill because they're in a very metropolitan elitist bubble, that will free them up and they'll be able to create even better content. So, there's a balance there, isn't there?
You're right. I mean, the whole free speech stuff, especially with Ofcom potentially doing. I mean, the government haven't confirmed that they're going with it, but it could actually happen, especially with the things that going on in the country, in the West in general. And this is why I'm sure you've heard we have started a new free speech movement on this channel. We're doing a free speech tour. The 9th of April we're coming to Manchester, so if you want to join us in Manchester or free speech rally, check out the link in the description. Make sure you book your tickets as soon as possible.
Is this your first event?
No, second one. We did one in London. We had about 500-600 people turning up.
Cool.
That was really fun. So we are going to go around the country, everywhere. But the other thing I want to talk about is the whole, because over the last couple of days we had the International Women's Day, and on this day every year we have the lefties coming out with the gender pay gap argument and the whole issue. So if you were to explain what's true about it, is it even real? How do they actually calculate it, and what's the situation with the gender pay gap?
Yes, so as you may have noticed, there are often these sort of tired old headlines telling women that they start working for free from this date, or that they haven't started earning money up until this date. And we sort of have the Fawcett Society, which is a feminist sort of lobby group that puts out these statistics every year. And the government is also demanding that every business publishes their pay gap data to show the difference between men and women in the same business and how much they earn. But the problem is that they don't differentiate between what job someone might have, what experience they might have, how old they are, what education they have, what position they're in. So you're essentially comparing the CEO of a company with a junior research assistant or something like that. And you had companies like EasyJet who were in the news. They had a huge pay gap of over 50%. Shock horror. But when it came down to it, why was that? Because the majority of pilots are male, and the majority of cabin crew are women.
Yeah.
So the thing is that it's unfair to force businesses to reveal this data and then make big misleading headlines about it.
Blanket views.
And also, what is the case is that actually there is no pay gap now between men and women under the age of 40. So what we have is after the age of 40, that's where the gap begins to grow. And what happens there? Why is that? That's because at the end of the day, it's more of a motherhood pay gap. So women make different decisions. Women take time out of the workplace very often. And that obviously has an impact on their earning potential and their career. And we can have conversations about whether men should, pick up more of the slack when it comes to childcare, or whether women want to pursue their careers further. But to sort of paint this narrative where women are always discriminated against, and that any difference in pay is due to sexual discrimination is just not the case, and it's misleading.
Yeah, it reminds me, because that's what the left do all the time. Climate change, and regardless of what people's views are on this subject, but we have the left dominating the whole thing and say, well, this is it and this is the solution. If you don't do it, you're wrong and you have to die. Whereas, for example, they attack capitalism and saying, well, capitalism caused it, because obviously before the 18th century we didn't have any climate change, and capitalism has to go down.
Yeah.
To fix climate change. What's your view on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the environmental movement has always sort of been coupled with an attempt to overthrow capitalism. And we see that. I mean, look at the Extinction Rebellion protests. What were the people carrying? What were they protesting with? They were carrying socialist workers' placards saying system change. System change, not climate change. And, we can argue about whether we should be even aiming for net zero with the economic trade-offs that we'll face. I mean, what does that mean? The government are already telling people that they won't be able to buy petrol and diesel cars. It's likely that in the budget they're going to put up fuel duty, which will mean that it's even more expensive to fill up at the pump. Already how much of your petrol is tax? 60% is fuel duty. 60%. So 60% plus VAT. And this is just going to make it more difficult for average people to go about their everyday life and go about their business. So I think that the government need to be honest with the people what the trade-offs are. And this sort of narrative from the left that, we need to destroy capitalism in order to make ourselves greener is just ridiculous. Under any system, socialism, capitalism, any other system that there might be, there's always going to be a trade-off. Because at the end of the day, what are carbon emissions? They're an unfortunate byproduct of making things that people want or they need. So unless we suddenly start going back to communal living, there's always going to be carbon emissions. So I think the government needs to be sensible. We have a Conservative government. They should be honest about the economic trade-offs. Everyone wants the air to be cleaner, right? Everyone wants us to live more sustainable. But if it's going to mean that people can't feed their families and people can't, drive to work, I think that we need to be honest about that. So,
absolutely. Well, no, I mean, this is all this stuff that we talk about are the sort of things that we are going to be focusing on in the next few months on this channel, but also the free speech tour that we're starting, because a lot of things that we said, you're not allowed to say that on the mainstream media or university campuses. And so what we're trying to basically give a platform to a lot of people who want to say these sort of things. This is why, as we said earlier, 9th of April, we're starting from Manchester. You can find the link in the description. Check it out, register. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully I'll see you soon on the free speech tour.
Great.
Well, thanks again, guys, for watching. We're going to have more guests on this channel. We are actually going to have Julia Hartley-Brewer from Talk Radio next Monday, so make sure you tune in. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe and click on the bell next to it so you get notified. We do have our daily show at 5:45 p.m. But also, if you want to get more out of this channel, you can join our membership club on YouTube. You could either find the join button next to the subscribe button, you could find the link in the description, or you could just go on youtube.com/mytc/join. You could get exclusive content that we can't really find on the main channel, and also exclusive members only live Q&As and live streams as well, to have access to what we say in our club. And if you want to follow me on social media, Twitter and Instagram, you can find the details on the screen down here. As usual, I'm MyTC. I'll see you guys tomorrow with a new video.